Hi, everybody. David Nour. I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Service Council inService podcast series. I'm delighted you're here. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and have another fantastic guest from the Technology Advisory Board, Neil Barua. I want to make sure I pronounce this correctly. CEO of ServiceMax is joining us. Hello, Neil.
How are you, David? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
It is good to see you. Good to have you. For our audience, we're going to talk a lot today about asset-centric digital transformation. And before we get into that, I would encourage our audience, jump in with your questions, comments. Let's make sure you get the most out of this interaction. But Neil, let's start with your background. If you could start personally, professionally, kind of where you've been, what you've done, and how you've gotten here would be a great start.
All right, I'll be as brief as possible but relevant, David. And it's I can't believe, by the way, thank you for everyone listening, and thank you to all the ServiceMaxes around the world. We have about 600 people at ServiceMax, and couldn't have been more proud to represent all of their great work and what's happening in the industry. So thanks for having me too, David. Really excited to be on this very important podcast that I listen to almost always and make sure I don't miss. So looking forward to the conversation. Quickly, David, just to answer your question, I turned 45 years old, so I'm now part of the older group versus the younger group. But more importantly, I'm a father of two children, 7 and 9 years old. Their pictures are behind me here. I've been married now 17 years to my wife, and I'm a Canadian that grew up in the East Coast and lived around the world. And for ServiceMax, I actually moved out the family to right now Menlo Park for the last 4 years that I've been CEO of ServiceMax, 3.5 years. So happy to be in good weather in California, David.
That's awesome. Talk a little about your professional background, kind of what led you to the ServiceMax, joining and leading the organization.
Yeah, look, I was a kid that didn't grow up with a lot of means, but had an awesome family that taught me hard work is what is important to achieve and to do things that are meaningful. And I was I went to New York University for undergrad school, and all I wanted to do, David, was make money. That was the only thing. I didn't care what job it was. I had to make money for my family and take care of them. And so I went into of the places that you make the most money at the time was being an investment banker. So start off my career being an investment banker at Merrill Lynch. And while the paycheck was good, it was a very unfulfilling job. And so I decided to go with a boss of mine to a telecom company of all places, and moved out to Los Angeles and ultimately Hong Kong, and worked at a telecom company that was owned by another telecom company, a minority stake, that literally went bankrupt. So my first day at the bigger parent company at the right wise age of 22 was the day the company was declared bankrupt. A company actually, some people might know, Global Crossing, that does all the fiber across the world. So I cut my teeth for 10 years at Global Crossing across multiple different roles, and ultimately restructured that company, grew it, and then sold it to a company now called Lumen Technology, previously Level 3. Then went to private equity, and then was fortunate enough to be CEO of a company called IPC that does financial technology for trading groups across the world out of New York City and Jersey City. Did that for 4 years, and then ultimately came back to Silver Lake, the majority owner of ServiceMax, and was able to compete for the CEO role for ServiceMax that they bought, David, out of GE, and have now been the CEO for now 3.5, approaching 4 years.
That's a fantastic background. And John Carroll's jumping in. It is great to have you on the advisory board, and I know it's going to be a rich conversation between us today. So how is Service Lake? How is being CEO of a PE-backed or VC-backed spinoff of a big brand like GE? Obviously, you don't have the GE name because nobody asks GE who, but how's it been the journey so far?
It's just, as I think everyone listening, it's been a phenomenal 4 years, 3.5 years. And it's just, there's a quote that I like to read sometimes about the man in the arena. And I think it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote that Tom Brady, who I have been recently watching his documentary, talks about, like being in the action. And right now, those viewers are listening. being in the action of what's happening in this world, David, is just incredible. I mean, it's stressful. I don't sleep well, but it is absolutely exciting what's happened. And I'll talk a bit more, David, about ServiceMax when we get into the conversation. But for all of us, think about what's going on, and everything is happening very quickly, rapidly. And I heard an earnings call recently of another CEO, and he said it the best. He said, it's like hair on fire. Our customers have hair on fire. And I think that's pretty appropriate for how we all feel personally, professionally. But man, oh man, what an exciting time to live, and what an exciting time to make a difference for those that need our help right now. So honored, truly humbled and honored to be part of ServiceMax, supported by Silver Lake, by the way, the private equity firm. I'll talk about, by the way, the PE experience, but I just wanted to make that high-level comment, David. It's incredible what all of us are going through right now.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little about ServiceMax, size, scope. You mentioned 600 people globally. Give us a little more context.
Greatest company in the world, bar none. I never heard about it until I actually, came into Silver Lake. Many viewers here probably have known about ServiceMax for many years, because the company's actually been ServiceMax, bought by GE and now owned by Silver Lake and ran independently for the last 4 years by us, has been around for close to 15 years, David. And it was built for the same thing that now we're doing at scale for the largest of customers in the world, driving field service technologies to our customers, a strong focus on the asset-centricity of field service. But the company, from the great founders that were built there to David Nour, the CEO that sold it to GE, and now I have the privilege to make all those folks proud to take it to the next level. Company's been doing great for close to 15 years, and it's amazing business on how much we care about our customers and how much of an impact it's making to service organizations worldwide. So really, really excited by that. One other piece here, just for context, right? And we'll get into asset centricity and why asset data right now should be the most fundamental, most important thing that all companies are thinking about. And I'll get into that in a bit here, what our customers are doing. But we have a very advanced, established, mature product, as well as an implementation process. And we should hit this point, David, around once you sell software, all built on the cloud, how it gets implemented, and the utilization and the customer satisfaction, all those things we're doing at scale with companies like GE Healthcare, Schneider Electric, and these are tens of thousands of user deployment, not just 50 to 100, right? So this is at scale. 3D Systems, Baker Hughes, Kodak, the list goes on, Carrier. And this is, I'm not trying to promote ServiceMax, but I want to give you a sense of the best of companies in the world are utilizing digital technologies to become competitive. And it's just becoming more of an imperative. I'm sure we'll get into the discussion about, David.
Yeah. So help us paint a picture of that ideal customer profile. So who do you and your team kind of really try to engage? And Neil, would be really helpful to understand, I'm sure there's a lot you address, but what is that fundamental pain or challenge that you guys are seeing, but it tells you ServiceMax is really an ideal fit for Schneider Electric or GE Healthcare? What is that burning kind of platform that you address?
Yeah, let me hit the first, the meat and potatoes, and then all the things that we could surround the meat and potatoes there. But the biggest pain point, this is actually going to make you sad. You might know this stat. I know John Carroll knows about it. We talk about it a lot. That's on the Service Council. It's the technicians of the world, right? The millions of field service technicians that are doing all the hard work that when we look outside, they're the ones fixing things that are needing fixing, doing maintenance on heavy equipment, et cetera, making sure planes are on time, trains are on time, the world works. Those technicians, right, have not been given, David, for the most part, digital tools to allow them to have an efficient way to do their work, right? So that's first and foremost. They've been predominantly since the beginning of time, because they've always been around here, they use the most basic Neanderthal tools out there, Excel spreadsheets, pen and paper, because guess what? They're the individuals that don't complain the most in organizations. Think about the sales guys, right? They're always like, we need this, we need that, we need this tool, we need this for pipeline generation. And many companies have done tremendously well serving salespeople, the CFO organizations. Field service technicians, which is the core customer that we target, right? We are very well advanced with the heads of service of big organizations, right? Those people that actually have to deploy, send out their technicians to an asset. So there's one element of what we do, which is and it's the easiest part, by the way, the scheduling and routing of the technicians using a digital app. We do that, right? So that's number one. How do you get a technician for what job at what time to what site? What we do at ServiceMax is we not only route the technician, the head of service can route and dispatchers can route the technicians, but once the technician, David, gets to the asset, this is the amazing part. The asset needs data for the technician to understand what to actually fix, what's under maintenance, what are the service contracts, what are the entitlements associated with it, who fixed it before? By the way, whoever did fix it before, what was the issue then? Then looking up through ServiceMax, do I even have the part to actually in inventory to fix the asset that I'm doing, for example, at a clinic for an MRI machine? So that's the pain point. Let me pause there, David. I'm sure there's multiple ways we could go here.
I love it. I'm now really curious. There's a lot I want to unpack. So you're right. The service technicians, and I appreciate Josh jumping in, very much the heroes of the field service, field customer service, customer experience space, right? So you're arming them not with as you call it, the dinosaur prehistoric, proprietary, tablets or, whatever. It's now cloud-based, it's modernized. It tells me where I need to be as a technician. Help me understand the next part. So the asset, let's just say a MRI machine from GE Healthcare. When you say the asset has data, how does that technician understand what needs to be fixed? And I don't need the nth degree of detail, just strategically, how do I know what's under warranty, what isn't? How do I know the last technician that worked on it? Give us a little texture on how do I get that asset data?
So full credit to the wonderful product team led by Amit Jain at ServiceMax and the R&D team and those that even came before us, right? That allowed for two things: an amazing mobile interface, right? So here's like a real life example. I was with Eric Anderson. We know him well here, Service Council, right? At Hologic, huge customer of ours. We're in full deployment across Hologic. He's the head of service there. When we sell him ServiceMax, and this will answer your question in a real way, right? We're implementing licenses by their technicians on our mobile app, ServiceMax's mobile app. Every technician understands what is the actual job to fix in the field, what MRI machine in what location do I need to go to. So within ServiceMax, you see that on their mobile app, routes you optimize to the actual site. So that's the easiest part of field service, in my opinion. We've all been doing it for a long time. Here's the big differentiator. Here's the game changer for all companies. And here's why Eric on the Service Council podcast will say why this has changed his entire company. When you get to the asset, you have the ServiceMax app. It tells you you're now at the actual site. Go find in room number 5 what MRI machine to fix. Within the app now, you see what is actually the issue, what part needs fixing, okay? What is the step-by-step way, again, on the mobile app to actually fix that asset in a compliant manner? Because if you fix an MRI machine, David, it's a very sophisticated piece of equipment. You have to fix it the right way. It's you and I can't go in there with our screwdriver and fix it because FDA looks at compliance, right? So within ServiceMax, we've ingested during the implementation process all the actual parts, the SKUs, all the info around the asset that comes statically from Hologic's, all their other infrastructure and data sources. We put into ServiceMax and we make it live. We make it breathe so the technician actually knows what to do with that asset. And then very importantly for Eric's organization, he then knows if I'm going to fix this part for a clinic that we've sold an MRI machine to, as an example, I know what to charge them, right? So like, and by the way, the technician found 2 other things that needed fixing. Within ServiceMax, we have an ability to match it to the service contract and then invoice the customer for Hologic to actually get money for that actual visit that the technician had. So let me pause there. There's a few other things we do, but
yeah,
it's the mobile that's killer.
It sounds like you really make that technician client experience frictionless, right? So if I know where I'm going, if I know what needs to be fixed, and the compliance part, obviously a critical one, I know the part, I've got the part, and it just, unless you tell me otherwise, it leaves the technician much happier because they look great in the eyes and heart and mind of that customer. The customer's happy because it becomes a one call resolution. You solve that once, not, sorry, I don't have the right part, or Joe and Sam and Steve and Beth have got to come back to fix this because I don't know what I need to take care of.
This is why, David, the greatest company that I've ever been part of, that I probably will ever be part of, is this company. We're not that well known outside of all these great customers that are using us. So I'm looking forward to David promoting, the things that we do. Forget about ServiceMax. I go back to this point, right? The technicians and what they do. If you don't have empathy around during the pandemic, while you and I sat behind our screens and our Apple MacBooks and sat on our couches and did Zoom calls, those guys and gals went out there to fix the stuff that we needed during the pandemic, right? If we can't, as an industry, and this is why I love the Service Council, because it's a group of competitors, but we have one aligned mission, which is everyone else is getting all these great tools. Everyone in corporate America is getting great tools. These guys and gals that do all the heavy lifting, the front line, get the, part of my French here or German, the shittiest tools. And we are here to solve that, and we have it. And many of these great customers are already using it. We just got to let others know about it. That's the key.
I want to recognize a lot of great people jumping in. Keith Heron, sales guys never complain. So we're lucky to have you, Neil, at the helm, and great leader with very transparent management. Thanks for jumping in. John Carroll says, according to the voice of the field service engineer, for our audience, if you're not aware, Service Council publishes some amazing field technician, voice of the field system engineer research. Roughly about 1850 individuals. The least enjoyable aspect of the day, if you're looking for drum rolls, number one is paperwork and administrative, which sounds like in many ways you guys eliminate. Number two, time spent finding information. Again, another one that you sound like you bring front and center to them. So, John, thanks for jumping on those. I also like the comment of guided workflows, anomaly detection, asset field service engineer behavior. Very hot topic. Talk about why would that be top of mind to a James Milet at Schneider or any of the other service executives you and I know within that, Eric? Why is this such a hot topic on the radar at the moment?
Which topic you're talking about, David?
Workflows and anomaly detection.
Yeah, because see, this goes back to like hair on fire right now, right? The pressure points of demand coming through us. One interesting thing that we're seeing, and you can see it, by the way, in companies that are public that are our customers, you listen to their earnings call, business is booming, right? It is like outside the CNBCs of the world and the stock market when you look at it. And thank God, by the way, technology companies that don't have a durable model the way we do are just plummeting. And no offense to those folks. We have a real business model that's solving a pain point. And when you think about this area of our customers, again, let's take Schneider Electric or GE Healthcare. They're getting an influx of so much business coming to needing their products. But guess what? They're dealing with supply chain disruptions, right? They're dealing with not enough technicians that are skilled yet because there's been the gray resignation, right? A lot of field technicians have been historically, and John Carroll's got the stat, older, right? And we have not been able to attract newer people into the field technician workforce, right? My customers haven't. Partly because you're not going to let my kid do Excel spreadsheet. My kid's not even going to know how to do Excel spreadsheet. They need a digital tool, which is, again, promoting why you need solutions like ServiceMax. But the key reason why, answer your question here, there's such a volume of interest in what's happening here and a necessity to drive it now versus just talk about it, is because the pressure points are increasing now. And when you have manual processes, here's a real life example. You now have very limited parts in inventory because several parts cannot be even sent, to the actual inventory centers to complete the product, right? So let's go back to the MRI kind of discussion here. That MRI machine needs a part. Previously, inventories didn't have real issues because supply chains weren't impacted. So when that technician went there, most of the time, he or she had the right part, right? Even if it was done in a manual process. Now, you have to make sure before that guy or gal gets in the truck, because you have less technicians, okay? So you have a limited workforce. But when they go, you better make sure the part is there so that you don't have multiple times that person's going to the site and you have a bad customer experience. So what does ServiceMax do? We have a lookup that allows the technician, before they get in the truck, to see if the part is in inventory. That allows them to then order the part, right? And have a timeline by which they then don't go to the customer and go empty-handed with a bad customer experience. The reason why this is really critical, and I just want to punctuate this point, David, for everyone, I think those customers that are listening, they know this. The pressure's coming because product organizations are having a very, very difficult time having a seamless flow of building products, completing products, and sending it to the field. Guess what binds it all? The service organization. You need a real tight service organization to make up for those gaps, David. Let me pause there.
Yeah, I tell every executive that we interact with through Service Council and beyond that the relationship really starts after the client buys, because if sales or marketing promises that value, the service organization in many ways delivers that value by ensuring uptime, by ensuring a great experience, by ensuring that the product that they bought along with services actually creates impact in the business. So we've got a great question from Joe. Does ServiceMax catalog customer parts inventory so the customer can replenish parts on shelves so they have analytics of parts failing and being replaced?
I believe so. I've known Joe for 20 years. He always tries to stump me, and he's not been successful yet. What I will tell Joe is the answer is yes. If you want more info, send me an email at neil.barua@servicemax.com and we'll have a chat. But this is to be serious for a second, this is the evolution that's going to occur. So I want to go back to the meat and potatoes. Our customers need a digital platform to actually affect those workflows that I mentioned that is pretty simplified, right? How do you route a technician? And then at the asset, how do you know what's happening with that asset, right? That's fundamental. That is the phase 2 of field service, which ServiceMax is very much advantaged on. Once you have that and the actual implementation, the organization's using it, right? Like a Schneider Electric as an example, or Kodak or 3D Systems or Baker Hughes. Then the analytics, the AI, all those things can start occurring. And already you could see customers like Schneider Electric, a longtime customer of ours, deployed it globally across tens of millions of their assets, right? They're now evolved to using AI, ingesting IoT data into ServiceMax to have preventative maintenance. And like that then starts adding the nice little around meat and potatoes, the sauce and the asparagus and everything else you could start doing. But I want to punctuate this point again. You need clean data to do that, right? Think about salespeople. Salesforce has done a phenomenal job, and others, by the way, in CRM, making every single sales interaction data-driven and clean in a CRM, right? For 10 years, they built all the data that I know right now what my sales guy is doing at every single second of the day, right? So that's been done for salespeople. There's far more assets in the world than there are salespeople, right? Those assets need that clean data. So you need a tool like ServiceMax to give our customers, like those customers that I mentioned, clean data. And then the wrapper of AI, analytics, IoT ingestion can start occurring to go blow your mind, create better PLM processes, to create better supply chain management and inventory management. Those things only can happen with clean data. And we are at the ground level doing that, David. That's the key point of this company.
Again, 2 points I think we often drive into every executive conversation: garbage in, garbage stays. So if we don't get clean data in, it's going to be really difficult to get anything meaningful, useful out of it. Number 2, Neil, I'm sure you've seen the same. One of the things I admire about really mature companies with processes, with great leadership team, is that they make data-driven decisions. Not my gut feel or intuition, or I've been in this business for the last 100 years. It's what is the data telling us? What do we need to really amp up? What do we need to dial up? What do we need to dial back in kind of our behaviors, in how proactive we get with certain levers in the business, and that data-driven decision-making goes a long way. So love the comment. Again, John's jumping in. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics, those executives that are 65 plus were nearly double, from 50 to 95 million by 2050. Obviously, you brought up the supply chain challenges. Neil, how are your clients addressing this silver tsunami? Because you've got a lot of field technicians, a lot of incredible village knowledge about the assets, about how we service them, about the best way to service them that may not be in some manual. They're retiring at a much, accelerated pace than apprentices or the next generation were able to bring in. How are your clients addressing that? What's the talent issues obviously top of mind? What are they doing about this?
So let me bring up the salesperson. I'm picking on salespeople because they get every tool, right? But it actually is where service organizations are going to go very quickly, led by ServiceMax here. Salespeople, when they leave, one of the great things about the CRM is everything that's happened to that customer and what the salesperson done with that customer. When they leave, and by the way, salespeople leave companies pretty often, right? As we've known, it's a very hot market for salespeople. They skip around every couple of years. The CRM has captured every interaction. So guess what? When we hire a new salesperson, they absolutely know what we've done with a prospect, as an example. So all the data's in a digital framework. In this case, we use Salesforce, right? Assets. This is important. So we have a graying and silvering of the workforce, particularly within field technicians. Here's the critical thing. They are going to retire, and they have been retiring, right? It's inevitable. We don't have enough supply coming in for new talent that is younger becoming field technicians. This is why there's an urgency, guys, is you need now to input the asset data. And here's what's important. When a technician right now is working on a big power system, as an example, within ServiceMax, you could see all the service history, David. You could see what parts were there, see what parts were ordered. We are actually allowing, and many of our customers are putting a knowledge base around what's actually happened to that asset, who's done it, and what's been the fix around it. The reason why I bring this up is when you have someone leave, and it's inevitable that we're going to get people resigning and retiring, right? Given the age demographics, who's going to show them how to fix this piece of equipment? Guess what? There's no history of it, right? It's like you take the screwdriver and you put it here, and my dad's a technician, right? That's what you'll get out of him. There's no even piece of paper that he could write on it, right? So you need a digital tool to transfer it to the next generation. Point number one. Point number two is, I actually think that there has been such a great thing that's happened for everyone, where because of the remote aspect of pandemic, you have what we're seeing in some of our customers. I was just talking to one the other day where they have part-time, the experts are becoming part-time, and they're sitting in their lake house on Lake Michigan, as an example. We have a tool called Zinc, right? And there's several collaboration tools. Our Zinc tool is now being deployed at Roche globally, okay? This Zinc tool is linked to the work order. And what it is, it's an internal chat function that allows, when there's a job, you could create a group that says, we're fixing this medical device equipment, David, right? And you could have multiple people on that Zinc group. Here's the critical thing. We have now a hotline function by which that expert that's sitting on Lake Michigan that knows everything how to fix that asset, you could send a newbie out to the field, and you could have the more experienced individual actually give inputs using Zinc to fix the asset appropriately. Those things are critical by which we could do the handoff in the relay race to the next generation. But none of that works, David. I'm begging our customers worldwide to understand this. None of it works unless you have a digital tool to transfer that knowledge. And that's why we have an urgency to get our name known out there and deploy this as an industry.
So you mentioned supply chain. We talked about, the kind of the silver tsunami and the talent agenda. I'm really curious of your lens, your perspective of, Neil, the last 3 years, going on 3 years of this global pandemic. Are there other trends that you've observed that will continue to have material impact on the field service, customer experience space that are going to stay with us beyond the pandemic?
Yeah, let me go back to something very tactical, and then let me But let me do the things that I think we're all really excited about as we get this data cleansed and within a framework that I'm talking about. One really important thing that we have to get right as an industry, I'm super proud of this, and I am gonna, peacock a little bit here, David, on behalf of the company, because for the last 4 years, we have kicked what in getting this right. Software companies like to sell because we arm our salespeople with the best of the best tools, and we can close deals. Okay, licenses get transferred. Everyone in software has done well, especially vertical software players over the last number of years. Here's where this industry really botches things, and here's where we got to get better, and here's where ServiceMax has done a tremendous job on. The implementation process, the actual utilization of those field techs. Think about this. When you're handing my dads of the world, a technician, a new tool, and he's used to using his pen and paper, getting in the truck and fixing things. You tell him you're going to use this new tool. My dad's now 84, by the way, but let's say he was 60, 55 at the time. You tell him, here's a new digital tool. It's going to make you ease up on paperwork, all that stuff. My dad doesn't even know how to type on a computer, right? Let alone how do you input all work orders? If you don't make it easy, that mobile interface, for someone to actually say, okay, fine, I'm going to use this, you're going to have a license that's underutilized, right? And so we spend a lot of time. I was at the kickoff, another example, I was at a kickoff of an implementation after we had sold the deal. And the organization was like, Neil, you don't have to come there. You're the CEO. No one comes to these things. You're the new logo guy. I'm like, this is far more important than getting the deal. It's actually making sure technicians use it, the internal organization knows how to use it, and you implement it well. My competitors have botched this process. So I want to be clear. We can't get to the promised land that we'll talk about unless you have technicians that know and like using a tool, because they're just not going to go and do change management unless that occurs. So we spend a long time, and this is a big shout out to my professional services group. It's a direct report into me. So it gives you a sense of, many times it's shoveled in some basement of an organization. The reason why it's prominent here is that experience, in addition to customer support and a great product and selling, is going to be the only way we get in 5 minutes what the promised land is. And we do that so well, David. I'm so damn proud of this team, because you can't get to the next stage without, that's why we've been around 15 years, is that part of it we focus in on.
For our audience, if you've joined us late, you're listening to Neil, and I'm going to get this pronunciation right, Barua, CEO of ServiceMax. And I can tell you definitively that Neil is surrounded by superstars like Lacey, because she made sure Joe knew that, yes, we can. Our technology can, in fact, do that. And if you're not watching the exchange on LinkedIn, it's a great one.
Lacey's always had my back.
I
remember our trip to India, and she made sure I didn't eat the wrong food. So and more importantly, she's done. I think Lacey's been here now 9+ years, and just another soul of the company that allows us to be as successful as we are. So glad to have her on the team.
Invaluable folks. John Carroll's jumping in. Right tech, right location, right skill set, right parts. The triage diagnostics, another big focus right now for a number of clients. So thank you for jumping in. Lacey jumps in with Zinc hotlines are great. I love this. Jan jumps in, as is working part-time by the lake. So we're all big fans of that. Joe's got another great comment. The friendly UI critical to adoption. I'm gonna come back to the trends, and I'd love Neil for you to think about the trend question that I ask of what are you seeing that you think will absolutely stay. But let's talk about adoption for a second. So it's no secret in the industry, a big preponderance of particularly technical or industrial equipment. The field technicians are, and it's not an age comment, it's just maturity and seasoning, and there are more of that seasoned kind of workforce. How have you guys found, and you brought up adoption, is there a secret sauce? Is there a formula to make that adoption easier? Is there, again, I got a very intuitive user interface, and I often use Quicken or QuickBooks as a really simple icon-driven kind of intuitive approach. What else? What else do you believe or have you seen that accelerates adoption, and not just the initial excitement, right? Hey, there's a new whiz-bang new tool that's rolled out, but kind of sustaining that usability to, again, create impact in the business?
Yeah, great question. And this goes back. My advice to anyone going through this journey, make sure whoever you use, hopefully it's ServiceMax, but if it's not, make sure you guys do your diligence on the thoroughness of that implementation plan. Let me be clear. That implementation plan, after I sell to Hologic X thousands of licenses, you need someone that's been there, done that around how do you integrate into these other IT systems that you've got across your infrastructure. Going to actually personas, who actually needs this type of license versus that type of license, right? Does a dispatcher in the work in headquarters need something similar to the field tech, as an example? All these small things, David, they all add up. And if you don't have a very focused, coordinated strategy of how are you going to go through the change management, and I'm telling you, the ones that do it too quickly and just say, hey, just implement the software, the technicians then smell it out and it doesn't get well utilized. So you have to have a thorough process set up. We do it really, really well. That's like, it's a real advantage that we've got because we've got 15 years of knowledge of doing this and we're doing it at scale, right? So, so point number two. Number three is on adoption. So I'll pick on Lacey again. I bet you she'll talk about the number of ride-alongs her and her team have done. So our team actually gets into the trucks of our customers that are using it and those that are new to see actually what's happening in the field, right? So how many clicks is it taking? Is the guy or gal annoyed that this thing is not actually being optimized for the thing that they're trying to fix? And literally Lacey sits on the seat next to the guy and watches him or her as they input into our mobile interface, and then comes back and continues to refine what do we need to make that experience better. So those like material things, Toby Donald runs our professional services group. We have a customer support team. We obviously have an account management team as well. All these and product team, all those things need to come together, and it can't just be one small implementation person at the customer site. It has to be a cross-business functional unit that is aligned to get it done. Please bring up Eric Anderson at one point and ask him about what he's up to at Hologic. It's phenomenal, and supported by us.
Yeah, so Eric's been a past guest, and what I love about his and Hologic is he came from sales, and it absolutely understood that customer experience folks like Lacey and your team kind of create for the service technicians, for those service buyers. Service Council is sharing, and again, John Carroll and these guys have some great research. 41% of service leaders cite integration of new technology into process workflow as the greatest inhibitor to realizing full potential of the technology, in essence, the adoption, which is exactly what you're referring to, is if we don't get the implementation right, if we don't have team members really observing what these technicians do, how they do it, the way they work, and kind of really create a frictionless experience for them, you should have no expectation that it will gain not only initial adoption, but kind of ongoing basis.
David, thank God these stats are going in my favor, else everyone would think I'm an empty suit. Thank you, John Carroll, for putting those stats up. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll get to the Service Council value add in a second. Greg's also jumping in. Adoption, clear vision for success, products that work well, easy to use, and an excellent post-sale service support and success engagement. Neil, is the ServiceMax model, economic model, is it a SaaS? Am I kind of subscribing on an annualized or multi-year basis?
Yeah, look, if you want me to peacock about ServiceMax and to a Wall Street analyst here, like this is a gold mine of a company in terms of it's 100% SaaS. There's no on-prem crap that we bought that most of our competitors have done and trying to figure out how do you transition to the cloud. And again, no credit to me. The founders built this since day one on a cloud platform. Before cloud was even, you could spell cloud, right? So that was like a big strategic decision made. And so it's a very clean SaaS model. We bought a company called Liquid Frameworks that is in the energy, renewables, and industrial services space down in Houston last year. Again, 100% built on the cloud. So when we buy things, many of our competitors buy a bunch of stuff, so the CEO feels good about it, but the customers are impacted. So we try to buy a clean tech stack. It is 100% SaaS. And then we have a professional services team that's a small percentage of of how we sell to the company, our customers. So when like Hologic would buy, they'd buy a SaaS software license from us, and then they would have an implementation line that we would do to, for a course of a few years to implement and service the product.
So I need your help in clarifying something for us. There was a Salesforce relationship. There was rumors of acquisition, several years ago, and then they went out and they either build or bought something of their own. Talk a little about the status of the Salesforce and the health of that relationship for a second.
Yeah, the other thing I wasn't part of this industry 4 years ago, and I can't believe the gossiping that happens in this industry. And it's fascinating. And it's sometimes you feel like you're in high school again. But fortunately, we've been focused on the customer, and that's what actually has created our success. We were close to $70 million of revenue when we took over, David. We're going to be $200 million, in this upcoming year. And we've created a great business model. We're free cash flow positive and profitable now. And so versus where we were when we started. Let me talk about Salesforce. They're a great partner of ours. We are built, many of our objects are built on Salesforce, and we have actually a new product that we've co-built with them called Asset-360, which leverages their SFS click base. And so to be clear, and maybe I should have hit this up front here, David, the world of field service has two elements to it. There's a resource-centric element, which is how do you actually get a technician in a truck and route that person to the job site. And then there's an asset-centric approach to field service, which is all the things that we talked about that ServiceMax does, giving you the asset data. We do both resource-centric and asset. Salesforce never did the asset piece of it. They just did resource by buying Click and reselling Click, as you probably remember, Click software, which they bought about 3 years ago. So Salesforce has done a lot in the resource-centric field service. And what we do for Salesforce is we add on to their customers. By the way, Hologic's a great example. They use Click for SFS for the resource technician piece. And Eric's using Asset-360 service by ServiceMax to get him all the asset data linked to all the technicians. And so that's how we work with them. They've been a good partner of ours. And in terms of acquisition or whatnot, yes, we're the pretty girl right now, right? And because we've done well, and I've got a great team, and we're kicking butt, and our customers love us. But I have Silver Lake, and they're big owners, the majority owners of the business. Silver Lake, huge investor. You probably see them in the press of, their largest investment, I think, is Dell Technologies, VMware, Twitter, you name it. They're prominent, most powerful tech investor out there, in my opinion. And they are smart, logical, practical, owners of companies. I've supported this management team myself for those 4 years, and we're looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, really building this with partners and aligning with folks that could really feel the energy of what we need to do for our customers. And we feel good about that position right now.
So let's stay on this topic of growth. Neil, obviously service growth, and your kudos to you and the team for the really nice trajectory of growing that ARR. There's Service Council is also in their research predicting big consolidation in the space. I think ServiceNow is the next one that's coming and looking to acquire, looking to roll up. Are you taking note? Is there an inorganic growth that's on Neil's radar as well?
Yeah. So by the way, I'm channeling my inner Bill McDermott by wearing this black shirt.
I was going to say, we both got the memo today.
David, I'll do a quick aside. I was I think I was 25, 26. The two greatest CEOs I've ever seen from having a sales capability, right? The showman quality. One was the guy I worked with for 10 years, John Legere, who then ran T-Mobile. Great showman, right? One of the best I've ever seen. Actually, I think he's a notch better than McDermott. McDermott, awesome sales guy, right? Just every time, he was just on CNBC this morning, and you could just feel the energy from this guy. I was a young buck running a sales group on the East region of Global Crossing, like 30 people at the time. And I was trying to sell something to SAP, okay? And this is little old, Global Crossing. And, John and I were very close, and he's my great mentor. And I was trying to sell something to SAP, and he's like, hey, I'm on this council with Bill McDermott. Let's just call him. So I spent 2 weeks doing a brief for John. We got the call arranged, and I got the call between John and Bill McDermott. I'm sitting listening and going to input when the time is coming. And John's selling for me, right? He's selling Global Cross, and we're trying to sell telecom service to SAP. McDermott, who literally is the buyer, and his whole team told him, John's coming here to pitch you to buy something, turns it around and says, I'm going to sell you SAP ERP. And these two heavyweights were going at it on who's going to sell who. And I always remember it's one of my favorite moments of the two individuals, but it was a lovely experience that I still think about a lot. In terms of our inorganic strategy, we bought a company called Zinc, a product tuck-in that now is really widely, it's a collaboration tool. It's like our Slack beater, our collaboration beater, but very specific to field service, right? And Slack does a great job, but this is highly focused in on field service and linked to work orders. So we bought that company right out of the gates. We then did our biggest acquisition, David, called Liquid Frameworks last November. So we're almost a year since we closed that deal. That got us a real stronghold into the energy markets, renewables, as well as industrial services. And that team is now fully part of ServiceMax, and we're kicking butt. My approach to M&A is get it right. M&A is really easy to announce. Finance, with money flowing the way it is these days, it's really hard to integrate and have a good customer experience. And we've been working through that a lot. And I think we have another 6 to 9 months before we pop our head up and say, time to buy another one.
You and I both spent some time at PE firms. I read recently something like $237 billion sitting on sidelines looking for good deals. So there's no shortage of capital. It's, you've seen the same culture, obviously product market fit with where we're going, expanding the product portfolio, getting customers who believe in what you're doing and expanding the customer portfolio. But I couldn't agree more with getting M&A right. And I think your investment banking background also lends itself really nicely to that space. I want to circle back on the trends. Neil, if you and I were to visit a year from now, what really stood out for you in the evolution of that field service, customer service experience?
Sorry, you cut out a bit. What was the question, David?
Yeah, if you and I were to visit a year from now, trend-wise, what lessons did we learn from the pandemic that you believe will continue to stay with us on an ongoing basis in customer service, field experience?
I think the necessity and the urgency to give digital tools to all these technicians is just going to, at this point, actually, you might think like Neil's continue to belabor this point. Why? We are still in the early innings of this thing, David. Like most of the technicians in the world don't have all the things I've been ranting and raving about for the last 45 minutes. So that trend's going to accelerate. There's no doubt, because there's no way to have done what happened in the pandemic manually. And most great leaders are like, we should plan for the next crisis, right? It's going to happen. So that next tale of just meat and potatoes, it might seem boring to many people. It's exciting to us, and it should be exciting to potential customers. That trend's just going to accelerate. It's happening. There's no stopping it. My board keeps asking me, is there a slowdown you're seeing, Neil? I'm like, I can't, there's no slowdown. I'm never seeing the customer base this engaged to do more, and those that we're interacting with potential. So that's going to occur. Then I think quickly the evolution, David, I think a year, maybe a year and a half from now, is how do you connect field service data off of the asset to all the other functions of the company, right? As an example, product organizations. Schneider is doing a great job on this, by the way. They're taking all the asset data. So think about it. Product organization, most of these companies build products and then they service it. Product organizations need to create more resilient products and different components that could last longer because they have supply chain issues. So the product guys, guess where they're going from? They do a voice of customer, they go out in the field, they have their own research, they talk to analysts like you guys, but what data are they missing? They're missing the data actually from the asset that's in the field. Guess where they're getting that from? ServiceMax. So that connection to product organizations, the PLM process, I think it just changes the entire context of product-based companies being more outcome-based and creating products that actually the world hasn't even thought about yet based on real data off of the assets that they've actually created and sold. So that piece, I guarantee you, David, in the next year to 2 years, we talk a lot about that connective tissue between the product organizations and the actual service organizations create a greater product.
Unless you tell me otherwise, it seems like service or the data from the service experience also has a lot of impact on designability, and design for service early on in the process in the R&D, engineering, design phases, not really service as an afterthought.
Absolutely. I mean, it's happening, and this is the reason I go back. The greatest company that most people don't know about is ServiceMax, because we have the ability to do this with our customers. There's no other foundational data set for assets that ServiceMax has, right, with our customers, because all the other asset data is static. And ERP is a static piece of data about the asset, right? It's just a bill of materials that we actually ingest during an implementation process. What's happening with assets that's on the ServiceMax platform, you know what's happening to them. You know exactly what's occurred to them. That's the richness of the data. And then when you implement that, David, and you give it to the design part of the organization, it's like, hallelujah. I now know that one subcomponent in a UPS generator sitting at a data center is failing far more times than anything else. Let me figure out a better design for that one component. Guess what? You can upsell to the customer, give more uptime.
When that service leader pushes back, I can't imagine a scenario where your asset centricity and getting insights and data from the asset wouldn't make sense. But when they push back, what are they pushing back on? What's the uphill battle in their buying process to say, yep, this makes sense. Let's look for opportunity to move forward.
It's a great question. It's I'll lean back on my brother in arms here, Eric Anderson. He came from the sales organization, right? Service leaders know they have to get this in their hands within their workflows for their organizations to be sustaining and to keep their talent and to actually have a profitable and a revenue generating business, service leaders. But when they run up against the CIO that says, yeah, whatever, like I'm working on something for the CFO and the head of sales, and they bark louder at a management meeting and an offsite than you do, because most service leaders, to their credit, get shit done, right? They don't like cry about like, I need all these other things. They just get it done because they have no other option. They do all the heavy lifting. The biggest resistance we get is service leader. I'm actually in a deal right now, one of the top Fortune 50 companies. Service leaders signed off on it. CIO sitting there saying, well, you know what? I'm thinking about this 3-year IT transition. I'm thinking about this. And they're like, that platform doesn't do anything like ServiceMax does. So that guy's now battling IT. He's going to win. We're going to win a monster deal this quarter. But like that resistance, David, I think it's partly due with service leaders. We need to empower them to have the most seat at the table with the most amount of power and conviction that all these other leadership team members do already for the last 20 years. And so I think that's happening. I think CEOs are recognizing it. That's why I just want to keep hammering this. Again, I'll pick on Hologic. The CFO and the CIO were in this kickoff meeting with me, right? That's a big deal. The fact that Eric got that, he understood, let them see it. And guess, we were almost hugging at the end of it because they understood this is going to create more revenue and profitability for us as a company. So that I think in a very long way is, I think, the biggest resistance piece.
For our audience, if you missed that, Eric Anderson from Hologic has been a previous guest on this live stream and podcast, and we actually talked about service leaders getting that seat at the table, really earning that seat at the table. Neil, in terms of that, we're hearing a lot of inflationary pressures and, slowing down GDP growth. And obviously you're bullish on ServiceMax. Talk about the resilience of the service organizations you're seeing in the second half of this year, certainly next year. With challenging economic times, a lot of organizations tend to cut back. And my fear is, fat, fine, but when they start to cut into muscle and bone, that starts to really create a lingering effect on experiences, on, the customer satisfaction, customer experience. What are you most excited about in the second half of the year? And I'm going to flip the coin and ask you, what's a concern of yours within the ecosystem that ServiceMax serves?
So I'll start with the positive. You can see, I'm a glass half full guy. On the positive, this is from all the things we've talked about for the last 55 minutes. and everything most of the people here on this call know, this podcast, it's become a nice to have to a must have, right? Like now you can't survive without doing this. And the pandemic highlighted that. Supply chain disruptions highlighted. So that's increasing. Again, I was with the largest med device manufacturer in the world, the global CIO, a week and a half ago. And they're having product, in the earnings call, so it's public information, they're taking write-offs on their product because they can't complete the full product because of the supply chain issues. He said the entire management strategy right now is to bolster services. We are changing from a product company to a services company. And so he literally came out, and this is a guy that most likely, he's spending time with the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. And he came out to Pleasanton, our little headquarter. We spent a long amount of time, and he's like, you're absolutely critical for the survival of my company. Like, who would have thought that? So that's the nice to have. I'm not seeing any slowdown happening there. In fact, I'm seeing an actual acceleration there. What keeps me up at night, what I think is going to be the challenge, there's a lot going on. Let me come back to my first point. This, one of the CEOs said, I forgot who, this hair on fire comment. We have overloaded everyone. I've overloaded, by the way. I know Lacey's a great employee. I've overloaded my employees. I've overloaded myself, right? And I think our customers have done the same because there's too much crap going on right now in the world. It is too much for us to handle. What happens with Taiwan now because of a visit? Like everything is, heightened anxiety, tension, and there's a lot to do. And I think we got to focus back in on what are the key things you got to get done, make it less so of a laundry list of things, and get a few things done well, right? And I think this prioritization is occurring on the nice to have versus must have and every boardroom management team. And we, as ServiceMax, we got to focus on the must haves, not the nice to haves. And we got to just get rid of the nice to haves right now in light of what could happen in the economy over the next number of years. And our customers are doing the same thing. Thankfully, ServiceMax has become a must have over just the last 2 to 3 years. And so we feel well positioned there. But we got to get over this. So we got to settle down a little bit as a world. And I don't know how to do that, David, but it's a little too crazy out there. We're burning a lot of people out.
I'm going to make sure it's a great point that we need to pay attention to. In that most recent book, I wrote about work-life blending and how during the pandemic, we all learned that I'd rather spend time with my wife and kids and grandkids than go burn the midnight oil at the office. And I think we got to kind of build on that momentum and create a much healthier set of boundaries for what we have to do versus what we want to do. I'm going to make sure we give a shout out to obviously our sponsor, Service Council. Why do you belong? What does ServiceMax belong to Service Council? And are you coming to the symposium?
We absolutely are. And it's been great for me. And like I said, we get on these calls. John's been great around it, the sponsorship, but all of us are competitors, and there's enough food on the table for all of us to eat because we're focused in on all these things we've been talking about. I obviously am biased. We're much better than they are. But that being said, we are brothers and sisters in arms. This industry needs to take the bull by the horns. This council allows us to do it because the users out there, these field techs need us to be our best and to empower those service leaders to win against the heads of sales, CIO, CFOs in front of the CEO to get this done. So it's really important, and I think it's been great, and I can't wait to learn more from my peers.
For our audience, if you joined us late, you missed a good one. Neil Barua is CEO of ServiceMax, and we've been talking about really an intentional focus on asset-centric digital transformation. So digital transformation in some ways kind of becoming passe because everybody realizes they need to do it. Some are certainly much better, stronger, more intentional about it. And Neil and ServiceMax's lens on that asset has incredible data that could enrich the lives, the work of the field service technicians, the organization, and really drive a more service-centric, data-centric decision-making process was invaluable. If you don't know, the symposium that I was referring to earlier, Service Council hosts an annual executive symposium this year, September 19th through 21st in Chicago. You can check out and learn more at servicecouncil.com. I hope you'll make time to come join us in Chicago. We're live typically a couple of times a month with both practitioners as well as technology executives like Neil who really cater to this field service, customer experience industry. So I hope you'll join us and come back for these live sessions as well as the podcast. And you can subscribe to those wherever you consume podcasts. So Neil, on behalf of Service Council, thanks for joining. Thanks for being a great partner for Service Council community. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.